I think you're on mute.
Workday starting to sound the same?
I think you're on mute.
Find something that sounds better for your career on LinkedIn. With LinkedIn Job Collections, you can browse curated collections by relevant industries and benefits, like flex PTO or hybrid workplaces, so you can find the right job for you. Get started at linkedin.com/jobs. Finding where you fit. LinkedIn knows how.
The wrongs we must right. The fights we must win. The future we must secure together for our nation. This is what's in front of us. This determines what's next for all of us. We are Marines. We were made for this.
Jewelry isn't a gift you give just once. It's a way to remind your loved one of a beautiful moment every time they see it. Blue Nile can help you find the gift that says how you feel and says it beautifully, with expert guidance and a wide assortment of jewelry of the highest quality at the best price. Go to BlueNile.com and experience the convenience of shopping Blue Nile, the original online jeweler since 1999. That's BlueNile.com to find the perfect jewelry gift for any occasion. BlueNile.com.
Oh, it's a goal. Who got the assist? Who got the assist?
Hello everyone, hope you're well. So here we are again, earlier than I thought when I was giving my whimsical see you next Thursday sign off last weekend. As like the professionals we are in WGTA, a realization came last week that Gameweek 27 is actually a set of midweek fixtures. Fun fact, the Germans call it an English Woche because they happen so often over here, which meant we had to scramble to put in an earlier one later for this week. But yeah, after this is a bit of a break, just as we thought things would get back to normal, Sam, here we are. Out of sync once more, and yes, joined by Sam as always, who was I think also caught on the hop. Neither of us realised, did we, last time? All right, mate?
Yeah, all good. Yeah, we were both a little bit surprised that we'd be coming back so soon, but I think we all figured it out eventually. And luckily, we locked in the pod timings before we went off on our merry way ahead of Tuesday, when it would have been too late because the game week would have already started. So yeah, luckily we both noticed that one. But yeah, overall, good weekend. Didn't really get up to much. And as we were discussing just off of air, sometimes those are the best weekends of all. So yeah, as always, we'll get into all of the good stuff in a second. But first up, we are Who Got the Assist. On today's pod, team updates to start with. Swift update again, because of course we're about to go straight into game week 27 too. Although the game week is finished, so we've finally got another game week where we can at least say what our exact score was and our exact rank is, which is always nice. We'll then be going into the preview ahead for the midweek fixtures in the tight turnaround, including Kneejerk, best captains, best transfers, bold claims, and of course, our plans for game week 27. But we're going to do a bit of a review on the assistant manager chip because a lot of us have just finished playing it in game week 26. Obviously, quite a lot of you still have it active. So we're just going from the perspective of what it was like to use it. And we'll be giving our thoughts anecdotally on whether it's generally a good or a bad thing for FPL. It's Sunday, the 23rd of February. City Liverpool is finished, was finished a couple of hours ago. So the final scores are now locked in and bonus points are also locked in. So we should be fairly safe to talk about our game week reviews, Tom.
Yes, indeed. And I think probably headlined by one particular man, but you have managed 300 clubs in a row, haven't you?
I think I missed out last week. I'm just going to double check that.
I'm sure you just got over the line last week. Maybe I'm wrong.
Wait, 1 minute. I've got the live scores up. Hang on. No, I missed out last week. I got 94 last week, okay. No dice, I'm afraid. But a good 3-week period. I've got 4 green arrows in a row now, so very happy overall. 100 this week, albeit with a -4. So again, I've technically missed out, but 96 was enough for another 120k off of my overall rank, just sneaking inside the top 300k now. So I'm starting to build up a bit of momentum, and I've got a team structure I like the look of for the next few game weeks too, albeit with only 1 free transfer for game week 27 though. So as I was quickly mentioning, 100 points overall, Glasner getting 1/5 of those points, was very happy, very welcome indeed. 20 points for him. I'm so glad I didn't cower away from it in the end, because I was tempted to go, in inverted commas, safer with Arteta, and obviously that didn't pay off too well. So it was a 50-50 call for me. In my back line, the only returner was Trent. I cannot believe he kept a clean sheet, having seen that first 20-30 minutes up against Doku down the right-hand side. That was a pretty interesting matchup, to say the least, but Trent coming out with a clean sheet was very well welcomed for myself. In the midfield, Mbermo and Salah both getting 14 points apiece, so vice captain and captaincy made no real difference. Put it on Salah, got the 28 points from him. 2 pointers for both my Bournemouth boys, Cliver, the new entrant there, and Palmer as well, getting yet another blank, which we'll be talking about in a moment. Isak and Cunha, my other new recruit, up top. Isak getting 13 points is great. High effective ownership, so didn't do me too much good. Cunha, on the other hand, with much lower effective ownership and my new transfer in, getting those bonus points for his one return, which we talked about before, is so important. And 9 points from him was warmly welcomed. On the bench, João Pedro, being frustrating as he could possibly be yet again, 12 points from him. Wouldn't have played, I don't think, if it wasn't for the Welbeck mystery illness / injury, whatever it is. So I don't regret that one moment, but it is annoying seeing a 12-pointer on the bench, as is a 9-pointer from Lewis Hall, which again, once the clean sheet got wiped out, I wasn't expecting anything from, thought it was a good decision. And he only would have gained me 3 points over Trent, who was the player I was looking at maybe rotating with Hall. So I'm only a little down on that. But like I said, 96 net, big green arrow. I can't really complain. And we've talked about this on the pod before. I'm not usually too upset with bench points generally. So I'm happy overall.
Yep, no, very well done. I think we're both on a positive upswing. God, how long is this going to last, Sam? Probably next week, back to square one again.
48 hours, yeah.
So 4 green arrows in a row for me from Gameweek 22, 550k in Game 22. Now 222k, I think it will be when my dust is settled. I had all the same players as you, pretty much, apart from I had Marmoush, you had Cunha, I went Glasner as well. I was pretty set on Glasner from the moment. Well, I think we were being a bit cautious on last pod just because the Aston Villa game hadn't happened.
That was it, yeah.
Going to win it, so I think I was saying I was going to risk it, but at that point it was McKenna who was kind of the straw man for risk. But as soon as the Glasner route was there, I think he was the best kind of option. Although some people went with Potter, some people went with Pereira, and also obviously had a lot of good fun there as well. Yeah, basically one of those weeks where, if it wasn't for Glasner, I'm pretty sure it would have been a bit of a nightmare. I only had the players that everyone else seemed to have scoring this week. Obviously, Salah, Isak, and Bumo, same as you. And yeah, in the end, I did do Marmoushim for Gakpo, who was very ex-lively on free kicks, very direct. I think he could have had 1 or 2 if circumstances differed. I think the shot that he had that was I think it was just saved by Alisson. And there's another point where, from one angle at least, Van Dijk stuck his leg out and just robbed him of a tap in. But I signed him really, Sam, to play with Haaland. There are lots of occasions where I think he was making a run. I think Van Dijk and Konate would have been positioned a bit differently if Haaland pitched. So I can't really control that. But yeah, I'm very hopeful the goals are coming, and that earlier sub was just to rest him a tiny bit. So he's probably going to have to start again versus Spurs. But yeah, hopefully you can match Cunha. That was a 50-50, and I vibed it. Not going to lie, that's literally what it was with those 2 transfers this week. I just, maybe because I did the positive history of Marmoush last week, just fancied it. But yeah, rest of the team, same as you. Sub Cunha, also benched Hall, but I mean, you can just all you can do is laugh at that. Really, he did have another assist taken off him due to the much criticised, controversial intended target thing, which I don't think we're going to go into here. Even though we are who got the assist, maybe we should at some point. But hey, yeah. Good green arrow, thank you, Glasner, up to 222k. So yeah, nicely set, I think, for going into the next few weeks. So I mean, this week it's going to be a fairly short pod. We always say that, but I do think it was worth. We did think it was worth just kind of quickly reflecting on, as you said, the assistant manager chip, our experience of it, and what we think of it in general. Just because we've both spent ours now, we've both had 3 weeks on it. We've both kind of, I suppose, had the ups and downs, mostly ups actually, to be fair. I think maybe the Emery draw with Ipswich was the down, but then amazing ups with the Moyes 4-0 in the last minute equaliser for Tarkowski, very, very, very last minute, getting us to a bonus draw. And obviously this week, Fulham failing to show up is what it sounded like, and Palace did a bit of a job on them. Important caveat up top, though, is that we're going to try to be objective about this and not be too led by outcome bias and resulting. Like it's really important, Sam, isn't it, when you talk about things like this, just to make sure that you're not overcome and subjective just due to the fact that you've done well out of the assist managership, which we undoubtedly have.
Yeah, for sure. And that's something that I think we discussed before pod, that we didn't want to be led too much by the fact that we have actually had a lot of success from it. So 56 points, I believe, for both of us, because we both went the same route. And I think in part that was because we both felt like we were chasing. We wanted to hit the table bonus. We wanted to go for the underdog managers that had the best shot of maybe hitting the bonus. And I don't think in my wildest dreams I would have felt it possible to hit all three of the possible table bonus in some form or another, getting the 2 draws versus Liverpool as well, and then also getting the win away at Fulham. All felt fairly unlikely, but possible, and all 3 came in. So I think if we did that 100 times over, we'd never hit that exact combination correctly again. It just happened to fall in our favour. In terms of whether or not it's a good chip, I think is a slightly different matter. And I think in a way, because there has been such high variance between some of the best performers and worst performers, especially this week as well, probably pushes me, even though I was on the good side of it, towards thinking that it might not be the best or most sensible chip to have in the game. Because as I explained in my on my own channel with this chip in particular as a focus, there is a huge variance in if you can hit one of those table bonuses versus playing it's safe in some cases on like an Arteta with an 80% chance of beating West Ham and coming out of it with absolutely nothing. And someone who has just maybe lucked out on it, who knows, it could have gone to Ruud van Nistelrooy this week and no one would have guessed it. A couple of managers would have got it and they would be 20 points to the good on someone who maybe has done a lot more planning. And whilst obviously that's a part of the game and we get that with the player base, it feels a lot less noisy with the player base. Like it's not anywhere near as likely that you're going to smack into a 20-point haul versus a 1-pointer for Salah on a differential. Whereas with this, it felt much more likely that those variance swings could hit hard either way, especially over 3 weeks as well. Like whatever happens in one game week, and it was noisy this week alone, some people getting 20, some people getting 0. Across 3 game weeks, that could be as much as a 60-point swing. And I'm sure there are some of you out there who got 10, 12, 15 points on the assistant manager. Incredibly unlucky to get that. But some of us got 56, 60 points. And 45-point swing feels quite noisy for something that we didn't even know existed at the start of the season. And it's something that none of us were really able to plan for either. So it's not that it feels unfair. It just feels like it's too swingy for my mind, and maybe it needs to be tapered a little bit if it is going to be a factor next season and onwards.
Yeah, it can only be done in the second half, 100%. They can't allow you to have that at the start of the season. Obviously, they can't. But like, we can do it alphabetically.
Well, on last season's positions would be the one thing I've seen. But I don't agree with it. I don't think they should do that.
Absolutely horrendous. They can't. They can't. It's got to be kind of when the league table is a bit more solidified. You're not going to have that one result, meaning a club goes from 17th to 5th. I mean, that just can't happen. That would be ridiculous. But yeah, no, I feel what you're saying. It definitely, I suppose in terms of my thoughts, it heightened the risk and reward we get from FPL and the experience. And I can see what they're trying to do. You get those moments of high drama if it goes well, like I mentioned with the Everton late equaliser and the draw for Emery versus Liverpool. And obviously, we were both chuffed to bits with Emery, with Glasner. But it did feel a bit divisive, of course. Lots of people didn't get it, nor we want to get it, it felt like. And lots of other people, and you've kind of really well summarised the sort of negative. Felt like there's a lot of sort of the variance meant that sort of longitudinal predictiveness that you might get for longer term trends is kind of gone, and it really is a bit of a crapshoot. It really, to me, felt like a bit of a watershed between those who want FPL to hark back to a simpler time and those who are kind of okay with it being sort of messed with, experimented with and augmented. And I suppose I'm kind of in the latter camp, actually. I'm actually okay with them making changes and experimenting with it. And I think this is actually through my experience of playing other formats. So I mentioned when I spoke about Marmouche that I'm playing Fantasy Bundesliga. It doesn't have chips, but it does have a lot of other positive quality of life aspects. I think FPL would be a much better game if they employed some of these. So, for example, automatically putting your best 11 on the pitch. It's within the formation, so you don't get to. So if you play like 3-4-3 and all 5 of your midfielders score well, the best 4 will be played. If that makes sense. So it won't automatically adjust that for you, but that sort of thing is done. And in the scoring as well, it's completely different from FPL, but there are rewards for things like winning duels, ground duels, aerial duels, all this sort of thing. So there's more than just goals, assists, and bonus. There's a lot more sort of things rewarded. And I said for a long time that I'd quite like that to be brought into FPL, but I know that won't sit well with some of the purists out there. And the System Manager, I think, is within that same sort of category, isn't it? It's something which is augmenting the FPL experience. I don't mind it. We'll talk about the potential negatives a bit more that people are mentioning shortly. But yeah, I don't mind it. If it came back, I'd be okay with it. If it didn't come back, I'd be okay with it too. Like I get what you mean about variance and that lack of kind of predictability. And outcome bias. Some people might be thinking, oh, he scored 56 off it for 3 weeks. That's why it's being favourable, perhaps. But having thought about it and talked it out loud here, I think what I'm favourable to isn't so much the chip itself; it's the game being enhanced and the experimental things like the assistant being thrown in rather than the chip itself. Like I like that. I'm really in favour of that. And to be honest, it's so easy to forget because this year, we're quite late into this year now. But for so many years, the game was pretty much stale, wasn't it, in loads of different ways, because we hadn't had an innovation before this season for yonks. The last thing that came in was the chips, right? And then there was kind of 4 or 5 years of just nothing. So I think that it's broadly a good thing that experimentation is being made. Whether the System Manager stays or goes, I'm sort of indifferent. That's kind of how I feel, which is I'm aware that I've got a fence pole stuck up my backside. But that's kind of how I feel about it. If I was leaning into the subjectivity of outcome bias, I'd be like, yeah, it's great, yeah, it's amazing. But you can put yourself into the shoes of somebody else, like you said, Sam, who's come out of it 30 points worse off, and suddenly I wouldn't be feeling the same way. So I won't be doing that.
On one last note on it as well, because I don't want to just represent our own views. I want to represent some other views I've seen in the community as well. And it's not something I personally have a particular issue with myself, but I have seen a lot of people talking about how they feel that it is closer to gambling. And whilst it's not something I necessarily hold in my own personal belief, if other people, 11 million people, play the game and it is at the end of the day an alternative to gambling, if any percentage of those people who are using it as a healthy alternative to gambling feel like it's getting them closer to something that they were actively trying to avoid, even if that's 1% of the player base, that's still something that doesn't really sit too well with me, because this is, at the end of the day, unless you want to go into your own paid private leagues, that's your own decision. This is a free game. And the fact that it isn't gambling is a huge positive on the experience for a lot of people. If they feel that, obviously it's called Assistant Manager, but we all know by now it's really banking on the team doing well. And that's a lot closer to gambling than maybe some people might say is basically placing your faith into players rather than teams. Now, I would probably argue that you can still do goal scoring odds. You can still do all of that with gambling too, but it is more often that you just go for the wins and the draws and all of that with team results. So it's not a viewpoint that I necessarily hold myself. But if 1-2% of the player base feel that way and it makes them less likely to enjoy the game, or it makes it feel like they're being drawn towards something that they're actively trying to avoid, then that sits fairly uncomfortably with me. And that would swing me towards calling it a negative thing for the playing experience. I'm a bit like you, though. Overall, I think there's a temptation to either color it really great or really terrible. And you've got to show yourself to be in like one of those two camps. I am somewhere in between. I don't actively hate it. I would probably veer slightly towards the negative, but it's very, very slight. I could live with it being in the game next season. Maybe with a couple of tweaks, it could be a good chip. But like I said, if other people don't like it and it makes them feel uncomfortable with the playing experience, then that's something that I would also like to highlight towards FPL if given the opportunity.
Yeah, well put. I mean, I obviously agree with that wholeheartedly. I think long-term listeners to the pod will know that I've nailed my colours to the mast on gambling and things of that nature.
Yeah.
If you don't, I'll summarise by saying my bio on socials contains, I think, no gambling inquiries, please. And that gambling as disabled on the audio version of the pod, doubtless causing lots in lost revenue, but so be it. I'm not getting on my soapbox about that. I'll give you an alternative point of view to that. I'm not necessarily saying this is exactly where I'm coming from, but on the gambling. So if maybe FPL is the vaping to gambling cigarettes, an alternative to gambling, FPL can also be, within that context, an extra layer of excitement and intrigue in terms of watching the football and listening to football content, watching football content, consuming football content, whatever you do, and having a vested interest in games otherwise not be as engaged in, or a vested interest in players I perhaps not even have heard of, like Dango, for example. That's kind of what FPL is for me. And I guess assistant manager is a bit of an extension of that, is another way of looking at it. You suddenly, as we saw this week with Glasner, have a huge interest in one team and a result, and you're watching the outcome of what with more intense scrutiny and engagement and excitement. And I think that's what assistant manager was for me, really. But I can see, of course, why some people might think that looking at team odds versus player could be another step in what could be termed the wrong direction. And I can certainly understand how everything I've just said there could be countermanded in terms of the language of gambling, because it really is. Because what I'm saying basically is that I'm effectively doing something on top of just watching the football to make it more exciting for me. And it's not really too far across the Mississippi from what I'm thinking here to me starting to place money on things. Now, I know that I've got a fairly addictive personality, so I'm just, and I also know what the gambling companies are like, so I've got no interest in gambling. It's just something I just wouldn't do. But I completely understand if, as you said, you've got 2% of people who do kind of have that, like that sort of that proclivity, that there has to be some concern there. But I guess for me, I do kind of see it as I said, something which I'm quite happy with in terms of just it being something that I enjoyed it, but I think that's kind of due to the outcome. I do think there's some positive kind of applications behind them experimenting with FPL. I think there needs to be some tweaks with the chip, maybe kind of damping down the table bonus part of it and so on and so forth. And I guess some of it as well is just because I do this pod and much helped by you, to be fair, Sam, bothered to get my head around it, which many won't be asked to, frankly. And that kind of helped me appreciate for what it was in terms of the FPL game, which was a powerful chip with a high ceiling. That's how I saw it. I didn't kind of see it as something which is kind of particularly malign, and it just kind of added to the FPL experience for me. But I can completely get why some people are a bit agitated by it, basically. So yeah, overall, I'm happy to see it come back. Or do you hope it kind of goes again? It sounds like you're kind of same as me, indifferent, fairly neutral.
Yeah, I'm fairly neutral about the whole thing. I think with a couple of tweaks, it could be all right. And it, like all of the issues that we've highlighted aren't things that I'm particularly myself too fussed by. But if other people are, then I'm completely on board with getting rid of it and looking at other mystery chips, because I like the innovation angle. And obviously what you were saying about finding new angles to make FPL more enjoyable and bring the game forward is great. And they've tried something here, so fair play to them. But if some people don't like it, then I'm happy maybe moving away from it as well. But yeah, I wouldn't be too fussed either way.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, I did derive enjoyment from it, but I can see why some are down. On the other hand, the main thing I want to see, and I said it already, but maybe this in of itself isn't to everyone's taste, and there's lots of purists out there who want to go back to one wild card and all that sort of thing. But the main thing I want to see is more evolution and development when it comes to FPL. I do understand that simplicity first perspective, but honestly, it's not that difficult to familiarize yourself with new things. It takes a bit of time, but before long you internalize it and start to enjoy it. Like it didn't take very long to internalize the chips. Didn't take very long to figure out that 5 free trans actually was a very good thing, and there's those different ways you could play around with that, and you can start to enjoy it within the confines of whatever the new world is. So whether the chip stays or not, I'm with you. Don't really mind if it is kind of something which is activating some negative things in people, triggering some things, then that's something that should be really listened to. But I think that the main thing I want to see is just hopefully more innovation. But some people don't want that at all. Unfortunately, this isn't a democracy in terms of FPL. They'll do what they want to do, but I hope that there are kind of there's lots of ways FPL could be improved in my view. So hopefully that they'll continue with that going forward. Right. Okay. I think that'll do for that one. Let's move on to the game week ahead preview. Oh, it's just started really, really winding here. Hope you don't hear that. So this week it's the Kneejerk. The best captains gets moved up to after Kneejerk for obvious reasons. We'll talk about it in a second. Best transfers in the bold claims. So a fairly kind of short and compact pod this week, just because there's only a small shelf life. But the Kneejerk, I think, is really, really worth talking about. It is we've exemplified it with Cole Palmer here, who's obviously kind of the main sort of lightning rod when it comes to FPL. But I think there's especially with the game coming up next, for Southampton at home, and then they've got Leicester at home next after that. So two really good home fixtures coming up for Chelsea. It is the mass sell-off of all Chelsea players, which I kind of understand, and Cole Palmer in particular. At the moment, I don't think he's top of the sales out, but he's kind of fourth overall. And the number of sales that we've seen over the last few weeks has been absolutely, over 2 or 3 million. I think he's probably one of the highest net transferred out players overall in the game at the moment. And I'm just wondering, Sam, in your view, is it going wrong for Chelsea, and what is going wrong for Chelsea? And are they a team, and is Palmer a player we can still trust in fantasy football? Because as you said earlier on when you were doing your team preview, it's another blank for Cole Palmer. And loads of people have started voting with their feet, as I've sort of documented. He's not got double-digit haul since game week 21 in the 2-2 blank versus Bournemouth. So, what's going on, do you think?
Well, I think if we're looking for a simple answer, it's the absence of Jackson. They really do look like they're trying to experiment with that centre-forward role. It looks like Jackson, as far as he has been a bit frustrating for FPL managers, did lead the line really well for them. He always created space for them. He was always making those runs in behind. And Palmer, alongside Jackson, teamed up very nicely. Whether or not it was Palmer actually assisting Jackson or vice versa, what it did was create spaces for other people to get involved as well. And it created more spaces in front of the centre-backs for Palmer if Jackson's dragging them away. Right now, they're experimenting with a mixture of Nkunku and obviously Neto in the most recent game, who I thought played pretty well through the centre, but there are limiting aspects there. He's not a true centre-forward. He won't know the timing of the runs quite so naturally as a Jackson will. So I think it will take time to work, and Jackson is out for a little while yet, it seems. But I think in a nutshell, that's really where Palmer is struggling. He's still creating a lot of chances. I think he's created something like 32 chances since the turn of the year and assisted maybe one of them, something like that. And that was an FPL assist. Obviously, one return in the last 5 game weeks in FPL as well. But the data's not terrible by any means. And from what I've seen on the pitch, he is maybe just getting a bit frustrated with his teammates. They're not in the places they want to be. There was one ball in particular, I think in the second half against Villa. Obviously, one time he took on half the team and then couldn't quite get his shot away in time against Martinez.
That's what I thought you were thinking. That's what I thought.
That's the other one.
Took on himself to just.
Yeah. But he's frustrated, right? And then the other half of it, he again took it around 3 or 4 and then played Nkunku, who was flat-footed. And a lot of people, I think the commentators as well, were saying, "Oh, that's Palmer's fault for the bad pass." But actually, if Nkunku was on the front foot and making the run, that would have been perfectly weighted. So I think he's frustrated more than anything else. And that is showing in the way he's maybe rushing things a little bit, taking shots on it in places that he might not previously, and also just the way he's acting with some of his teammates. However, I think we'll come on to it. The next 2 fixtures being what they are, I just think that is the perfect time to make amends. And I just don't see how he doesn't return in the next 2 games. So there's no way he's going anywhere for me.
Yeah, Paul's just said in the chat, Nkunku was considered such a must at the start of the season. Remember those days? You started with them, didn't you? It's incredible how much things have kind of changed around. Look, I mean, you're completely right, but there's definitely kind of that side of it. The other side of it, in terms of what we're seeing on the pitch. The other side of it is that the last 6 matches, they're actually top for XG. Chelsea, team XG, they're second overall this season, and Palmer himself is 5th for non-pen expected goal involvement over the last few games. Unsurprisingly, of course, he's also underperforming because it's just not working out on loads of different levels, is it really for him? I'm pretty sure he's top for under reflecting what you said, underperforming his XA. I suppose the question then becomes: is Saints and Ipswich the next 2? Saints and Leicester the next 2? Are they going to be the tonic for Cole Palmer? Because I suppose we see this a lot of time in FPL, don't we? We see a team who are struggling come up suddenly into good fixtures, and one of the maxims that we've always held in WGTA, at least, has been fixtures beget form. And I wonder whether these two are going to be probably a bit of a tonic for a faltering team, where suddenly they can rediscover that kind of confidence. It's one of those things that maybe the movement's right, everything, the underlying data kind of shows that they are a team that's still kind of creating enough of those chances. That's for sure. It's just at the moment that they're lacking that kind of bit of pizzazz, bit of extra. I don't even know what it would be, but whatever it is that kind of turns a team which is statting well into a team which is performing well. They're the second highest underperformers in terms of XG over the last 6 matches, behind Wolves, actually. One of those, isn't it? I'm never going to be advocating selling Cole Palmer at this juncture. I think that he's currently 4th, I think, for most sold this week, but it's not very much because obviously the game is just finished. I'm pretty sure that those people are just kind of reacting. There's no way that you'd be looking at your team and thinking, yeah, Cole Palmer at home versus Southampton, that's a problem I need to deal with. So yeah, I think he's obviously going to be staying for us. And what do you think about that kind of fixtures begetting form? Because surely the next 2 are as good as you can possibly get.
Yeah, did anyone watch the Southampton and Leicester games over the weekend? Like, do I need to say any more? Oh my God. Like, Southampton were awful. Like, as bad as I've seen us ever. 4 goals conceded that were just completely schoolyard stuff. I watched the Brentford game live on the Friday as well, and Leicester were all at sea. These next 2 fixtures could not be any better for Chelsea. Southampton in particular, I would be stunned if they didn't score 4+ against us. We lost our number 1 centre-back, who himself isn't great, and that's Bednarek. We won't have time to change our system, which Juric, after the game, mentioned, we can't play in the way that I've set us up. We're not capable. We're not good enough. So we need to change the system. He has 2 days to do that, and we're going away to London, to Chelsea, to play the next game. So we'll have at most a couple of hours on the training pitch to try and rejig the formation with a brand new centre-back who hasn't played at all this season, Bella Kotchap, and try to keep them at bay when, like you said correctly, Chelsea's team XG is as high as anyone's in the league over the last few fixtures. They're struggling, but they will see this game as a prime opportunity to get Palmer into central areas in behind the DM, where at the moment, again, we've got no fixed DM. We're really struggling to figure out what we're doing with Downs or whether we're playing someone else there. We've got wing back problems. There's just no way that Palmer is a bad option going into the next 2 games. Everything I've just said for us goes for Leicester as well. I'm sure if you got a Leicester fan on this podcast, they would say the exact same things I've just said about their performance against Brentford as well. Both at home for Chelsea. It is the ultimate version of form begetting fixtures, you would think, or fixtures begetting form. Sorry. And yeah, I for me right now, he's massively in the captaincy consideration for game week 27 at least, possibly 28 as well. But I think given Salah's fixture, less likely.
I can't see anybody else unless you've got like a Colwill hanging around. I can't see any people who have maybe. If you're following review very closely, very, very keen on buying Nkunku at the moment. It's at 5.7, but we haven't really seen much yet. But I would be worried for those people who have sold Palmer over the last couple of weeks, even if you've had a few kind of decent kind of outcomes from it. Like if you sold him before Brighton and then you've just had a great time, then fair play. But yeah, it's all signs seem to point to that being quite a painful one over next week, which brings us nicely on to best captain, because I do feel like, some people are going to have like Haaland, but I've got Marmoush kind of hanging around against Spurs as well. I think that's a pretty good kind of captaincy shout, depending on who you're lacking. I guess if you've got Haaland, you're probably lacking Palmer, so I can kind of see why that might be a bit of an option for you. But it feel like it's very much about the anticipated EO monolith of Salah versus kind of Palmer in a bit of a no-brainer game. I've seen this movie before several times, Sam, and the outcome of this movie goes two ways for me. One, they both score about the same, or two, I get punished for going against Salah. That's kind of how I've seen this movie in the past. So I'm very undecided on captaincy. It feels like you're potentially a bit more leaning one way or the other, are you?
It's just Salah, isn't it? That's the problem. He's just so unbelievably inevitable this season. He's got 41 attacking returns. He's running at 1.5 attacking returns a game at the moment, just over, in fact, which is unbelievable. The data's better than Palmer, and Newcastle have conceded 7 in their last 2. So it's not like I'm overlooking Salah, because I think that he's going up against a really keen defence that are going to keep them out altogether. However, if there was an opportunity, Palmer will be lower owned and lower captain than maybe he should be, because he's blanked recently. And again, because Salah's been so consistent recently. So if you felt that there was an opportunity and they were fairly evenly weighted going into the game week, then it would make sense if you're chasing to go with Palmer, because he'll have far lower effective ownership. And I've said it several times on this pod this season, if you truly think it's a 50-50 call, then going with the lower owned player when you're chasing makes sense. If you think it's a 55-45 call, then you go with the 55. And if that was Salah, then fair enough. But for me, it's very close to a proper 50-50. And a lot of the data, in terms of like the algorithmic stuff, you can look at it or not, it's all backing Palmer at the moment. And considering the data he's been putting up recently, I think he's been unlucky not to get the returns, whereas Salah, obviously inevitable, but his data hasn't been as good as the returns have suggested, let's say. I do wonder if there's an opportunity that maybe we're just overlooking a little bit, or will be underrepresented because Salah's just been as consistent as he has been as of late.
Yeah, it's pure safety. I think that you'll almost definitely see there's not going to be one that if you don't captain him, he won't be kind of a negative against you this week. They'll both be over 100% EO. That's a fact. So it really is within that where you think it's going to depend, where's the pendulum going to swing. FPL review, for anyone who does care, has Palmer, in terms of FPL review, streets ahead for the captaincy for the week ahead. And I think it's one of those things that I want to make a decision on it tomorrow, and not be kind of sat there on Tuesday flitting between the two, honestly, because I think that kind of is a bit of a road to ruin, changing your captain on the last day, and probably good to just have a feeling about it. I think that, as I said about that movie, it's one of those things where you kind of, sometimes you just think, it's just so obvious, I'm going to go for the obvious one. It's all qualitative, isn't it? You think, I'm going to go against everyone, but it's Salah, and Salah does Salah things.
They're both obvious in different ways.
Yeah, and
this is the thing.
The fixture is just so enticing, isn't it, for Palmer? So I think that's going to be something that's going to really be. It might be too strong for me to resist, to be honest, given my rank. If you are a bit higher up, maybe you might think, stick with Mo. Honestly, as I said, both of them are going to be negative this week for you. The one you don't captain, that is probably going to be negative for you. But I think I'm slightly on Palmer's side. But God, their profiles are fairly similar as well, aren't they? They're both from penalties, both talisman. I mean, I don't know. One's from a faltering attack, one's from an attack which is overwhelming everything in its path. That's probably what you need to look at. But the strength of the opposition as well is just is pretty important here. And Southampton, as you said, they're going to
just conceded 4 XG at home to Brighton.
Yeah, exactly. Q 2-0 Southampton, and Salah scoring 4 versus Newcastle.
Probably
one of those weeks is going to be very swingy. But I think that I don't think it will. I think they'll both score about the same. Both score 12. But I'm kind of minded to go Palmer this week. That's for sure. If you own Haaland, didn't own Palmer, Sam. So if you're on a Haaland Salah setup, Spurs away for Man City. Obviously, if you own Haaland, he didn't play this week, so I'm guessing you're kind of thinking, "Oh God, what am I going to do?" Because there's only a couple of days for the next there. But all was fine. Dandy with Haaland, I suppose would you be going for Salah? I think you probably would, wouldn't you?
Yeah, Salah 100% over Haaland this week. But Tottenham have looked a bit better recently as well. Danzo coming in has made a difference. Down the left-hand side, they've got Spence, who's been brilliant recently. They've looked a little bit more secure. And as we saw earlier on in the season, Spurs did a bit of a job on City too. And obviously piling onto the fact that Haaland didn't even make the bench, having made the bench against Real Madrid. Now, what that says to me is that he travelled for the Real Madrid game thinking, oh, I might be able to push through, but they noticed something a little bit more serious going on and obviously wasn't able to make the game today. I think there's something more going on there. And I think he might even be a bit of an issue going past game week 27. Obviously, too early to tell at this point, all speculation, but I don't have very high hopes he's going to play 27 at all. So I'd be looking at maybe Salah as the captain, clearly, if you had that combination.
Cool. All right. So let's see what happens tomorrow. Basically, I don't know if we can get press conferences. Right. So best transfers this week. Quite a lot going on already in the market. Your man Matthias Cunha, Sam, 200,000 transfers in for him, and he's a certainty he's coming for me eventually. It's just when he does, whether it's kind of 29 or whether it's now. Talk about it later. I've got a bit of a benching headache with it by him now. But back to his own old tricks, really. As you said earlier on. That bonus whenever he does anything is just astounding, isn't it?
Yeah, he's so ridiculously consistent. It's because he's got all of the aspects the BPS loves. So all he needs to do is get that one little bump with any attacking return whatsoever. And even in like a 2-1 loss, he'll usually and quite often come away with the maximum bonus. I think we saw it, was it against Liverpool as well, where it was a 2-1 loss and he came away with 1 goal and the 3 bonus. Absolutely ridiculous for a player of his price point as well, being as talismanic as he is. And recently, the data's been getting better and better week on week. The actual XG output has been improving. As you mentioned, they've been underperforming their XG output too, with good fixtures around the corner. And of course, game week 29, when a lot of us will be trying to bring in players, particularly for that game week, if you're avoiding the free hit, he's got Southampton. So he ticks all the boxes for me right now. Any goal for him is effectively a 7-pointer at this point, and an assist is a 4 or 5-pointer. So yeah, I absolutely love owning him already, and long may it continue.
Yeah, he's definitely in consideration for me to bring in. It would just be whether I'd have to bench probably Dango. So yeah, that's one to definitely think about. In second, you've got Mr. Bumo. Over 100,000 transfer for Bumo, Everton, Villa, and then Bournemouth in the blank before their fixtures do turn quite substantially until kind of game week 36 after the blank. I can see why people are bringing Bumo in. There's a case of 1 shot, 1 goal really this weekend. Great goal, I'm going to say. And before that, I was kind of thinking, oh, he's a bit wide. I'm not sure about this. But yeah, real moments player, as we've sort of discussed in the past. I can understand why people are kind of jumping there. On the other side of it, though, Morgan Rogers, Sam, who you did bring in for a game week a couple of weeks ago, Ahmad, Palmer, as you mentioned, and Gordon are all being sold. So quite a lot of midfield movement with Bowen as well, with Leicester up next. So you mentioned Leicester a minute ago being a bit negative. West Ham's hero scoring the winner in the first half against Arsenal. So yeah, quite a lot of movement in the midfield. I suppose if you don't have Bumo, probably the way to go, but probably not at the expense of Palmer though, right?
Yeah, not at the expense of Palmer. I think a lot of us have the structure right now where you've got the 2 premiums, then maybe 1 7 to 8 million. Bumo fits that profile very nicely. I also really like Bowen. We'll be on penalties with Paquetá out for quite a while, I think, 3-4 weeks. So should be good all the way through game week 29. And obviously, the data's looking good for him. I think 13 attacking returns this season too, and playing out of position up front. So really like Bowen. Leicester next. So we've already talked about how easy Leicester are to play through. We just obviously saw it with Mbeumo in particular. So I really like him as an alternative. I also don't hate Bruno in that sort of field with penalties, good minutes, 2 promoted clubs in the next 3. I would probably still be just about veering towards Mbeumo or Bowen, but don't completely rule out Bruno. I think there could be some managers who go there and maybe see some interesting upside in the next 3. I know Arsenal is one of the next 3, but the other 2 are pretty tasty. So not one to completely rule out, although I'm not going there. So probably not one to focus on too much. And Mbeumo, I think it's a bit of a a final goodbye, a long wave goodbye, because after game week 30 or after game week 29, a lot of us will be looking to get rid of him because the fixtures really do turn. But he's been brilliant this season, and I want to enjoy the last 3 game weeks with him, even if I think on paper they look okay, but they're not the best 3 fixtures in the world. I still think he'll do all right, though. I could see 2 attacking returns in the next 3 game weeks, and for an 8 million asset, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that, and I'm more than happy just to keep him for a little while. But then kind of game week 30, 31, it is against Newcastle and Chelsea. So I'm not saying it's kind of completely fallen off a cliff. And this year, any team can be anyone, it seems like, unless they're called Liverpool, which means that I think that you'd probably be fine to hold him that, but he won't be on my wild card, I'm fairly sure.
Exactly.
Going into that 32, 33 double. Rodgers being sold, Sam, a top sold player this week, as a yellow flag at the moment. So that will be kind of quite slow. So if you do need to keep him, I suspect you're probably going to be all right, and to just kind of leave him be for a week, bench him, and then they've got Redbrook in 28 and the blank in 29. I mean, you're a Rodgers owner, or you are, as far as I know, but you may have made a move by now. Rodgers owners out there, I mean, would you be thinking, if you are making a move this week, he'd be one to move on?
Well, yeah, I got rid of him for Kluivert, so I can't really recommend him anymore. Obviously, the injury doubt is the big swinging factor here. But once the double was out of the way, if you're not looking at free hitting in 29, it makes sense to have a look at elsewhere. He is playing a little bit deeper, it seems, with Rashford and Asensio in the team. They need to rejig it a little bit, obviously, to fit in all of that attacking firepower. And Villa did look good against Chelsea. So he's not a must sell if he's fit. But I think given the opportunities that other players present around that price point, with a game week 29 fixture on the cards, then I think it makes sense to get rid of him. And let's face it, the data's not been great recently overall, barring the Ipswich game. It's not been brilliant for a little while now. In the Champions League, he's been on fire. Is it FA Cup or League Cup? He did something pretty good as well.
Yep.
Basically anything other than Premier League. And obviously that's just variance, but I think there are enough other good options that have the fixture in game week 29 that, unless you're free hitting, it makes sense to look at maybe moving him off with the yellow flag as a bit of an excuse to do so now.
Yeah, definitely. Final one to just kind of quickly bring up here is Munoz at Crystal Palace. So another double-digit haul this week, the second double-digit haul in 3 weeks. And one of those that I think those like you and I, who are probably going to be running through 29, not using the free hit, are going to be happy to love and leave. But Villa up next, who are presumably potentially going to be a bit tired after playing after playing kind of midweek already last week against Liverpool, of course, and then Ipswich up next. He and Mateta, as we discussed last week, fall into that camp of for us, love them, we'd love to get them in, but probably not quite feasible. But again, you can probably understand why some managers are thinking, hey, you know what, I've got a defensive issue to deal with. Maybe you've had enough of Mr. Robinson at Fulham. So maybe you're thinking, well, okay, I can just go across to this dude who seems to be kind of doing bits, even though Fulham have got Wolves. I'm one of those players who, as we said the other week, is very reminiscent of Alonso if you play back in those days. So he just finds himself in outrageous positions. Missed the tap in a couple of weeks ago, as Rory mentioned on James Planet FPL's Clash Correspondence not very long ago. And this week pops up in the right place, and he's one of those, isn't he, where you kind of I started the season with him. Did you?
No, I didn't, but I've been touting him for quite a while. I'd love to have him, and it's only because we've got the 29 coming where he's not playing that I don't have him right now. Otherwise, he'd be straight in. I absolutely love him as a player. The XG data is great, and I think game state also matters here. The fact that they were 1-0 up and holding on to a lead against Fulham, and yet on a breakaway, he's the one charging up the pitch alongside Mateta deep into the second half, when realistically he'd be well within his right to maybe hold position and just try to absorb the pressure and let the attackers do their job. He's clearly been given an instruction to bomb forward whenever possible. He's every FPL manager's dream, really, for some sort of defender under 5 million to be doing that kind of thing late on in the game is ridiculous. And he's actually got a partnership going with Mateta at this point, which again, for a right wing back is kind of nuts. I will probably almost certainly be getting him on wildcard because they're likely to have double, or at least obviously one double in game week 32. Although, albeit not the best fixtures, I think that's enough of an excuse for me to be hopping across to him after game week 29's out the way. For now, though, I'm kind of just a bit miserable that I don't have him in my back line because I love him, but I don't think it's quite worth the transfer for me to then also be looking at either transferring him out or have him sat on my bench. And I don't really have the spare transfers to be playing with, unfortunately.
Yeah, if you end up with a double in a 30, 32, 33, then he's just shooting every single wild card you've ever seen in your life in game week 31. So there's a okay chance that the 34 versus Arsenal was brought forward to 33, depending on results. So I think if we did see that, he'd be in absolutely every team out there. One of those players who's a reluctant sort of non-touch. Sorry, there's one more thing I had on the agenda here, which is that Kluivert actually has been sold quite a lot at the moment. So he's one of those which he's in the top 10 for buys in still, and he's also sixth, just behind Anthony Gordon for sales. Obviously, the sales aren't very high this week, but this is the first week in a long time that the buys in aren't dominated by Bournemouth players. Red card has definitely played a big role in this, to be honest. I don't really see much traction behind kind of thinking, oh yeah, well, he's not done very much for 1 week. Let's get rid. I think it must be that, mustn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's completely dusted, isn't it? They're done. Their season's over. Yeah, I mean, one blank. I mean, come on. They had a red card after 20 odd minutes. They needed to reshuffle. They put Dango at left back. Come on. I hold faith in Bournemouth for a little bit longer just yet. Kluivert will get taken off early every now and then. He'll get 75 minutes, but we've seen that anyway. He's on penalties when on the pitch, and the data's also great. So for me, he's a hold through to game week 30 when I wildcard, barring injury or barring him losing his place. And I don't see that happening considering how well he's been playing. They are getting players back. So we talked about Evan Nilsson possibly coming back relatively soon. It will be even sooner than that by the looks of it, because he's, of course, been on the bench now, didn't get any minutes, but that might bring down the expected minutes of Altara, possibly Kluivert, but more likely Altara. But I don't really see it as a massive pressing issue ahead of this game week. I think it's one to just assess week on week for now.
Yeah, and that I was going to say that in a minute, but I want to say it now. That spotting Mr. Evan Nilsson on the bench just makes me think, yeah, just get Cunha in this week, bench Dango, and just see what happens after that. But yeah, no, that's really big. In terms of making transfers this week in general, it really feels like it depends so much on your path here. If you're kind of going towards that 29 and running through, roll or bring in a 29 friendly player seems to be the way forward. And if you're on the other side, then sure, go wild, buy Mateta, buy Munoz. I don't think there's anyone else you probably want to be buying out there, to be honest. Don't think it'd be steaming as Newcastle, or maybe we buying Lewis Hall back just because there's games coming. But I don't think you can need to be doing that this week, really. But yeah, it really feels like this is sort of the parting of the ways almost, in terms of the changes you're going to be making and the path you're going to be running, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think this is the first week where it really properly feels like either one way or the other. Like, I wouldn't personally be bringing in a Crystal Palace player now if I wasn't free hitting in game week 29. Obviously, that's my path. If I was free hitting, I'd be full steam ahead into them because they've got great fixtures either side. So that's the main point of interest, I think, is probably the Palace assets. Obviously, a lot of us already have Newcastle and Liverpool, two of the other major teams blanking in game week 29, the other being Villa. Most of us aren't really that interested in Rodgers at this point. Rashford, maybe. Asensio, maybe. But it's still quite early days on both of them. So given those are the only four teams that would really dictate which transfers you might want to be making, obviously the other 16 teams you can bring in regardless of whether you're free hitting in 29, because they're good either way. So unless there was some particular Aston Villa or third Newcastle player that you're really interested in, I don't think it makes much difference at the moment. So I think transfers will be relatively quiet this week, barring some sort of injury scare. I don't think it'll be massive swings either way. And a lot of us will be setting up to get to 29 and then assessing what we're going to do with Man City options, depending whether Haaland is fit by then or not. He probably will be. and then we'll probably look at making some more drastic changes then.
Yeah, quite a quiet night in the transfers in terms of the price rise. I think it's just Rashford and maybe Bowen who are going up. Gakpo, we've still got him. I think he's one who's projected to fall, and elsewhere it's like an Ahmad, Foden. But I suppose most people have kind of moved on from them anyway. So it's not a night where you can afford to wait tonight and get some information tomorrow. Because it might be, as you said, the manager says, "Oh, X or Y has had an injury in that game," and suddenly, glad I waited. So hey, there we go. Right, before we get on to our teams for this week, bold claims for the week ahead. Oh God, we really need to sort this out, Sam. It's 5 weeks out of 26 so far. We've actually got something on the board. That's disgraceful. I mean, last year I think we were running at a decent rate. I think last year we were kind of like 30-40%. This year I think we're running at about about 20%. So one in 5.
Yeah.
That's horrendous. We need to just do something. We're not going to start kind of saying, Haaland to score, Salah to score a goal and assist, because that would be outlandish. That's basically a sure thing. We need to do something about this because it's getting ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, so we missed again. I went 5+ goals in Man City Liverpool. I thought that'd be a blockbuster. In a way, it was. It was an interesting game, but the XG totals were very low. Obviously, just a 2-0 Liverpool win there. So no point for me. What about you, Tom? Yours was bold.
Mine was bold. Yep, it was Leicester and Southampton to win. Let's move on very swiftly. Let's move on very swiftly from that. I'm very glad that I don't put too much thought into these in some ways, but maybe that's part of the problem.
I'm going more simple. So I'm just saying Salah to get an attacking return. That's my bold claim. No, I'm joking. Come on. I'm going for Palmer and Salah to score the exact same amount of points in game week 27. So they got to nail it, bang on the money. Whether it's 1 point apiece, 2 points, or 20 points each, they got to be exactly the same.
Yeah, seen this movie before, Sam. Yeah, I can vouch for that one. Probably scoring you a point. And my one, come on, 5+ goals in Spurs versus City.
Nailed.
It's got to happen, right? That is points, right? I was thinking, I could get 4. I could go 4+ goals. I think that's probably. I think it's got to be 5. The magic 5, doesn't it? Really, you can't go for that. But surely there's be goals in that game, and surely my man Marmoush is going to be scoring loads of them. Hey, let's see. Cool. All right. So slightly short pod this week. Teams and plans for the week ahead. You're looking fairly well set.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've got a lot of players facing each other, which is never nice. I've got Pickford going up against Mbermo. I've got Gabriel going up against Wood, who I don't own but will crucify me. I've got Trent going up against Isak and Robinson going up against Cunha. So it's not ideal. So it might mute the upside a little bit this week. But I'm pretty happy with the team structure overall right now. I'm starting off with Pickford in goal, Robinson, Gabriel, and Trent at the back. Trent looked knackered at the end of the City game, so I'm maybe 5% worried that he misses out, but I think he's too important at this point, and they don't really have alternatives. So I think he has to play. In midfield, I've currently got the armband on Palmer. That's going to go right down to the wire, but I do have a gut feeling that Saints are just... Well, maybe it's anti-club bias because I've seen us too much this season, but we just have no clue what we're doing at the back right now. So I do have a gut feeling like they're on Palmer, although it is close with Salah. Got the 2 Bournemouth boys, Cliver and Semenyo away at Brighton, and Mbermo against Everton at home. Up top, I've got Cunha again at home to Fulham, Isak away at Liverpool, and João Pedro, who is now a starter again for Brighton, on the bench at home to Bournemouth. I think that's the right way to play it. I don't think it's necessarily obvious that he's behind the likes of Semenyo maybe, but given that Welbeck could be back at any point and then he might lose his place again, I don't know if I can start him. It would be frustrating and even more of a troll if I actually played him this week and he didn't actually start yet again. So let me know what you think on that one, Tom, actually. But other than that, I think it's a roll. And then after that, I'll probably roll again in 28 into 29 with 3 free transfers.
I can't see where you play. There's no way you bench Isak, so I don't really see where you play Pedro. Oh yeah, I mean, if it's Dango, then fine. If you had Dango rather than Semenyo, I'd be like, yeah, sure, play João Pedro with him. With Semenyo, you know he's going to play, and crucially, you probably know he's going to play 90. He was the last man standing of the kind of the popular Bournemouth trio on the pitch, wasn't he? So my feeling would be you've probably got to set up there and as you know, the effective ownership of João Pedro due to the mass sell-off over the last few weeks is going to be fairly low. So one of those where you're not bothered by bench points. I know you're not. Then I think you just one of those that you just can't take on the chin really if it does happen. I think that's got some way of looking at it really. And as you said, the only thing is the captaincy, where the hell that goes, because I am no closer really to getting that. I'll turn the page to me then. So I have my 3-5-2. So it's similar to you. Captaincy is currently on Mo Salah. The only question is, I've got an Ndai who's injured. I can afford to move him comfortably to Cunha. Problem is that leaves me with a bit of bench headache. So I've got Dango and Cliver against Brighton away. Bumo versus Everton at home. Obviously he's playing. Palmer and Salah, no question. Marmoush away at Spurs, and then Liverpool. Isako at Liverpool. So if I did buy Cunha, who would I bench? Probably would be Dango, and just assuming that he might be taken off for Nilsson to start to be sort of eased in. So the X-Mins goes down to kind of 60. And plus I'd be kind of, I haven't got the same problems as you really in terms of players playing each other. I know there's a lot of that going on this week. My only sort of versus actually in my team is Isaac versus Trent. The rest of it I don't have. I don't have Robinson. I don't have the people can have Wood versus Gabriel. I haven't got that either to worry about. So I'm in a pretty decent position in terms of that. I already got Kirkes. Fun fact: since I sold Van Hecker, I dread to think how many points I've lost on that one. Actually, Sam, which is ridiculous if you think about it. How many points Van Hecker actually kind of quote unquote cost me? Selling Van Hecker for a
use his real name, Van Useless. Van Useless,
yeah. So he got a clean sheet the week that I sold him, and then this week, if I'd have not made that transfer, I would have played Hull. So I look back over my FPL team as a kind of team 3 or 4, which was like an old one. And I was like, don't mess with your defense and just my lord. Anyway, that's a sidebar. So I think that Ndai obviously useless. I think, and Cunha is a 29 friendly transfer anyway, so it doesn't really matter if I don't roll it. So my feeling is I just do Cunha and then probably bench Dango now.
Yeah.
And then next week probably make a similar decision, which probably to bench Dango again, just because his effective ownership isn't that high. There's nothing else really to hang my hat on. I know that his underlying data is amazing. I know that, I know everything there is to know effectively. But he's probably a player that I can just about live with staring up at me from my bench, because obviously there's going to be no question, as I kind of mentioned earlier on, if I did buy Cunha, there's no way I'm benching Isaac in this vein of form. I think I'll probably do that, probably do it tomorrow. And the way I've got, then the final question really would be where I go with the captaincy. I think at the moment on the YouTube screen, it is the captaincy is on Salah. It is. I think that there's probably a really good chance. I'd probably say I'm 55-45 from the discussion today of actually putting it on Palmer. But I just don't know. I really don't know, which is a dangerous position to be in on Sunday night. I'm just hoping that by this time tomorrow night, when I'm going to bed, I'll have a better feeling about where I'm going to go with it. I believe that Palmer plays on Tuesday and Salah plays on Wednesday, if anyone cares about
That's
that.
True.
It's one of those things that when it's 50-50, all these stupid little things come into mind, don't they? It's very hard to look at it irrationally. You think, oh, you know what, if Palmer does blank, when I'm kind of spending the next day just thinking, oh crap. I don't know. I'm very kind of on the fence about it. I'm not sure. But yeah, I think overall the team looks really good, and I think if I got on Cunha, I'd be more than happy to do that, and just hope that Fulham have an off day, but they're the sort of team that kind of could show up and just smash Wolves 3-0 easily.
But 3-1 and Cunha gets the 9-pointer.
Yeah, and they've been underperforming Wolves, haven't they? As we've both mentioned. So I'm fine with it. I think I'll be absolutely fine with benching Dango and bringing in Cunha. So I think that's kind of that's option one. Really, and it's just between the captaincy and where we're going to go next. I'm just hopeful that we've both had the 4 good weeks. Probably be quite good to kind of get into the top 200k. Is there something kind of psychologically quite good about having the 1 in front of the 6-figure rank, because you feel like it's within touching distance to get the 5 figures, and then beyond that is great. But I think we're both kind of the hope momentum keeps going into this week. It's just Chris Woods, really, Sam. That's the only one I can think. That's literally the only one I can think of. Chris Woods. If Chris Woods does score against Arsenal, scores a couple against Arsenal, then
that would ruin your week, wouldn't it? For so many reasons.
It's curtains really for everybody involved, isn't it? But
yeah,
hey, there we go. Let's hope for the very best.
Yeah,
cool. All right, well, short and sweet this week. I've got a little bit of a break, haven't we, as well, which is quite nice.
Yeah, so obviously we've got the midweek fixtures for Game Week 27, which is why we've brought this forward to Sunday. And then we were panicking and thinking, we need to do another podcast in between now and the next weekend. But of course, no, we've got the FA Cup next weekend. So that'll be interesting and exciting. And we won't have to worry about rushing out another pod. We will be back with our normal Tuesday, but the following Tuesday. So don't come back this coming Tuesday, with the next one after, once Game Week 27 is done and dusted, and we can start looking ahead to Game Week 28. In the meantime, thank you all so much for listening. We have been, as always, Who Got the Assist. You can find us on Blue Sky at WGTA, or myself at FPL Pricey, on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, WGTA_FPL or FPL Pricey on there. And Instagram or Threads is WGTA.FPL. FPL Pricey on there as well. If you enjoyed the pod, if you could go and give us a follow on those social channels, that'd be greatly appreciated. But if you could also give the pod a 5-star rating wherever you're listening, that'd be great too. And if you're watching along on YouTube, then if you could hit like and click subscribe, that would be greatly appreciated too. Thank you all so much again for listening.
Yeah, thanks very much. Enjoy the break next weekend. Thanks for listening. We hope it's just you think about midweek, and hopefully it's just you think about the assistant managership too. We'll be back after a little break on Tuesday week. So speak to you again. See you next Tuesday.
Oh, it's a goal. Who got the assist? Who got the assist?
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
At your job, do you ever have to deal with a nose roller? How about a snub pulley? Well, if you're installing a new conveyor belt system, dealing with the different components can sound like you're speaking a foreign language. Luckily, you've got a team ready to help. Grainger's technical product specialists are fluent in maintenance, repair, and operations. So whenever you want to talk shop, just reach out. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.